Okay, we're good to go.
Good morning, everybody. I'll call to order the board meeting for the Metro Vancouver Transit Police. We'll start by doing the Territorial Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the Metro Vancouver Transit Police operate throughout the traditional territories of the Lower Mainland Coast Salish people, and we give thanks for their hospitality on these lands. Okay, so we'll move to item 1.1 on the consent agenda. We have a number of items to be considered. I move that we consider 1.1, determine if we want to take anything out. I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Marnie. Does anybody want to discuss any item on that agenda and take it out? No? Okay. So we have a recommendation that the directors approves and receives for information all of the items on the consent agenda. Can I have someone second that, please? Okay, Sean. Do we need someone to actually say it, Taryn? Or is it sufficient if I can see someone raise their hand?
I can see people raise their hand. It is live stream, so it'll only be speaker view.
Okay, I see. Okay. So we had a seconder. So that's item 1.2. So we move to item 2. Stephen, we can, or somebody we can hear background noise. I'm not sure who it is. Item 2, public delegations. Do we have any public delegations today?
We do not.
Okay, item 3.1. Do we have the TPPA in attendance today? No.
No, we do
Okay.
not. No.
All right, let's move to item 3.2, the Chief Officer Information Report. Take it away, Dave.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So first of all, just start off with an update on COVID related in the workplace and the health matters that we've taken into consideration. So we've been very fortunate at this point in time that all of our staff, including sworn and civilian staff, have maintained themselves in a healthy mode. This, of course, is attributable to the way they're living off the job and measures that we've taken on the job here. In concert with, I would say, the work environment that TransLink itself has invested heavily within the systems about cleaning and cleanliness and a mask policy for ridership in terms of it, which has helped, I'd say, minimize the amount of risk that's going on. So we've been fairly good with that. We are working what I would call as a normal schedule of shifting. So our patrol officers and those in specialized units are working regular shifts. There is not an alternate of any measure right now. However, with our civilian staff, during the COVID, we were able to do a couple things. One was we looked at a compressed work week, which we've negotiated with the association as part of a separate MOU to the collective agreement, allowing for compressed work weeks that minimizes the number of days that staff will come in. And this is for the long haul and long term. And second of all, the number of staff who we can have work remotely off the site. That is a top priority, is to minimize the number of staff in the building. And working with our IT and other sections of the enterprise, it has worked very well to make sure that staff are efficiently equipped and capable of doing their full range of duties in a remote manner. That carries on, and I think one of the things we'll have to look at as we move into the future is what we call the future state of work. I think this is a reality for every business as to whether they are going to have staff return to the work full-time, part-time, or not at all, and how things are done. So that is an ongoing process that we're engaged with every week with TransLink and our members and the association in terms of preparing for and looking at how the office is even structured, how what staff are capable of doing, and even as we look to future recruit staff, where they may be able to be located. Now that's primarily, of course, you can imagine it's our civilian staff. The unfortunate part of being a first responder, whether it be police, fire, or ambulance, at times is that the job requires you to be there and be on site. There may be some administrative tasks that can be done remotely, but the vast majority of police work is required to be on there, present and available to assist. So with that, I think we've reported on this, is that when COVID first hit,
Is it me or is he frozen?
I think it's the technical glitch. Dave,
I'm back, I hope.
you're back.
Okay, I'm back. I didn't do that on purpose. When COVID first hit, we saw a significant drop in ridership. And as I've reiterated in the past, the vast majority of people who use the transit systems are doing it for a legitimate purpose, are not causing any concerns, whether it be for business, school, work, or just casual transportation. So calls for service and crime did not drop in a proportionate manner. Well, ridership was down. There was a drop to some degree, but there was an uptake in some other activities, such as thefts, break and enters in and around the system, some additional nuisance calls for behavior. And of course, there were some aggressive activities that occurred as people were worried about distancing. So slowly the ridership is rebounding as it comes up into it. Part of this will be an increase as we see schools return. It'll start to grow even more. However, business itself and places such as universities and businesses that continue to have their employees work from home won't see a full 100% rebound in the number of people looking for to return to the system, probably until you'll get closer to higher numbers in mid-2021 is some of the estimations. However, having said that, the systems continue to run at their, I want to say, it's not like it's a rush hour period, but run in a regular fashion, regular timing. And that includes all of it from C-Bus to West Coast Express to the buses and the obviously the SkyTrain. Part of this we've also encountered is that there is a mask policy. Just to let you know, it's been very, in terms of COVID, there's a mask regulation where everybody on transit is required to wear a mask when they're on the actual systems. To date, compliance has been well over 90%, if not over 95%. There are some people who have exemptions from this. It's almost a self-declaration for exemptions, and there's been minimal types of disruption when we come to that. However, having said that, there are occasions when there have been up to physical altercations with individuals who confront each other with the wearing of the mask. We've taken a very much inform and educate approach, as has everybody around that at this time. However, we are reminding our members that in those cases where it would be appropriate, that the issuing of a ticket for that offense is one of their discretionary options in which to use. Part of this time for us during COVID-2 was to reorganize a bit the structure. We now have a new unit that has been put out in place, and it's a targeted mobile enforcement team that takes on a variety of different activities in virtually, in response to the issues where people sometimes think of the randomness of enforcement. Why is this happening at this location at this time? Taking a real intelligence-led, more intelligence-led approach, even on issues of whether it be Fairgate or targeting criminal activity, that the mobile enforcement team works from a very statistical, intelligence-led approach as to where it is. So someone asks us, like, why are you here doing this? We usually generally say, we're doing this in response to X. So the reason we're doing Y is because we've identified X as the issue. And therefore, we're not targeting individuals or an individual or a person, we're targeting a problem that can be occurring in terms of it. The team's new, it's been up and running just for a couple of weeks, but generally it's been working well. We've also started up on other initiatives, I say targeting, such as the a repeat around, I'm going to say, crimes associated with the bus and bus systems. As you know, the transit around here is very effective. Both it's reliable, dependable, it can be counted on to get you where you need to be. It's one of the hallmarks of the system that makes it available. So we have partnered up with North Vancouver in particular as our first step here on working on the mobile criminals that are headed towards the North Vancouver area, committing property crimes, in particular thefts, break and enters, and then using the system both to get there and return back. That is, again, something new that has just been happening and will be measured over the next while. The early results show there's quite a bit of activity and has been well received by the North Van RCMP and the communities up there, which has fit in well with a resource team that we've worked out with the detachments up in that area there. There's some others just which we'll touch on later too, though. But while we talk about COVID, I also just want to remind you, and we put out recently, there is a real spike again that we're encountering with opioid overdoses in and around the system. We put out, I think we've got 2 members who have now saved about 3 lives in the last 3 days. We had a death right beside the system yesterday in terms of it. And just, you know, it continues to be that need for that presence of the police officer who is there and finding and locating these individuals or having them pointed out because you're physically there and visible where people can get a hold of you. Of interest though, just as kind of a side note on that, what we've seen though is it's taking more and more doses of naloxone to bring people around. It's not just, you know, 1 shot, 2. Quite often we're reading up to 3 doses of the naloxone to revive the individual. So, you know, that it's kind of the other crisis that is being shuffled a bit to the side here. And I just don't want to lose sight on that because, you know, constantly we're hearing of it. You know, yesterday's event was, you know, I think there were 4 members tied up with, you know, doing both administering naloxone and CPR and finding an AED and, you know, giving this person the best thing while awaiting for other emergency services who did arrive quickly after being contacted. But it is something that's really being seen in certain parts of our system right now, and something for us to be aware of. And that is the update on COVID and just on COVID. So I'll just kind of stop there because then we have I'll speak a bit about the quarterly report and if anyone has any questions on COVID. Hearing none. So there also attached, we've got our quarterly report that was attached here, item 3.2 for those that was sent out to you. Just a couple things that we noted that, of course, we did our first Indigenous liaison officer with Constable Kirk Rattray, Cheryl Simpkin, and now we also just graduated was Emily Stasiak, who are all part of the organization. I think we're really blessed to have, in particular, Sergeant Simpkin leading the NPOs in that. The work she's doing in this area is tremendously important. And one of the things they even learned from her the other day is they're taking a real look at what they call as the urban Indigenous person. In other words, it's the person who isn't really attached to a set community, whether, you know, they may recognize themselves as being part of the Coast Salish, but they don't come from a set community somewhere. They almost identify as just an urban home setting and not a home place to go to. That, of course, we will be reaching out next week. There is a piece of artwork that's being presented to us, which symbolizes the transit and transit police and tells a story. And the young lady, Christine, will be here to present it through a ceremony. And hopefully you've either got your invite or Stephen has promised he can live stream this through some video, right, Stephen? Yeah, just nod. Yeah, at this point. And that will be coming out next week. There was a new anti-sex offense campaign. Remember, this is one of the biggest issues for us is to make sure that all passengers, but in particular vulnerable passengers and females, feel safe being on the system. And quite often we're referred to as, you know, they may appear what someone says to be a groping or a lesser incident, but these are can have a very significant impact on individuals and the feeling of being unsafe. So congratulations and hats off with the communications team that partnered with grade 12 students at Sir Winston Churchill. And what they did is they developed a campaign based on, they created the wording of it, they created the artwork for it. We were there, I say we, Stephen and his team and TransLink, to provide the support for it. You'll see that it was done, it was presented to the media and now forms part of the anti-sex offense campaigns throughout the system. There's a picture on there. And again, you know, it's that person who's sitting on the system and someone lays a hand on them and then, you know, starts making suggestive comments that makes it entirely uncomfortable and the feeling of not being safe, which becomes important. I think what's really good about this is that's the type of person who we want to, you know, encourage to use the transit systems and encourage them to feel safe. So it's their story is what they say are the things that need to be addressed, which is important. So hats off to somebody who didn't pay a big consulting company to develop our whole program, but actually went to the people who use the system and made it happen. Again, just talking on the opioid crisis, we've now administered and saved more lives this year than we did in all of last year. And there's still obviously 3 months left to go in the system in terms of it. And I think some of this, then we talked, there are in the quarterly stats, some crime stats. Now I cautioned a bit about this because as our ridership dropped, but calls for service and crimes didn't drop accordingly, we rate ourselves on a per 100,000 boarded passengers. For a lot of communities, they use, you know, their population per 100,000 or per 10,000 or per 50,000. So calls went, ridership went down. So the 100,000 number was dropping, yet crimes didn't drop in accordingly. So when you look at things like other criminal code violations per 100,000, we're up like 210% in terms of it. So it's the percentages where we'll be digging deeper into the actual numbers and watching how the numbers occur in terms of it. The stats are there available for it. There are no significant. We saw a spike at the beginning of COVID with property crime issues as being as indicated, which was, I would say, is that individuals who may have had other ways of achieving funds or finding things maybe through different types of acts such as shoplifting. But when stores closed and restaurants and that closed, there is a segment throughout the Lower Mainland that rely on it, finding another way to supplement their incomes. And so seeing that break and enters and robberies and that was an issue that came along at the same time. Other than that, on the stats, again, I'll just say there was nothing of big significance in our stat numbers and it leveled out. We did see for a period of time there issues which raised a concern, which was the potentially racially motivated comments or incidents that were occurring. And places like the Vancouver Police stood up some additional resources even within that community. And we did have, it was announced last week, an arrest in regards to one incident that was caught on video some time ago. But there's not been a significant number, seems to, for us at least, that has been diminishing over this period of time. And that is the quarterly report, which will be presented to the TransLink board next week in a slide presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chief, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question or just
Please.
ask for, thank you for the report. I'm just, I don't know if you can talk about it later, but all the other influences that are around the world, we talked about it last time. Can you give us any color on the morale changes as a result of the defund the police movement in the US? What are the other Canadian police officers saying? Sorry, chiefs are saying? Anything we can do as a board, anything in that in that light that we should be aware of, kind of call the global impact on our force here.
I think if you can imagine that, police officers, and I say this before, are truly just ordinary people doing extraordinary work, right? Being tested and tried. The comments there, that when they come out, I think almost they create a sense of sometimes a lack of support. And I think that they know what they're doing is important, and policing is such a regulated, at least in Canada here, and we're being influenced by events in the States, that I think we need to be reminded that policing is very heavily regulated in terms of, independence with the IAO, independence of the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, our own internal standards and practices that are put in place. So I think sometimes from a perspective, from a member's view, it's that feeling of isolation, or people don't truly understand, what it is they're putting up with, or what it is they're doing. Some of the criticisms, I say rightly, are just, they undermine the confidence of officers, and people have to be reminded that some of the stuff that we policing are involved with is stuff that's been handed down to us. It's been handed off to the police over time, and so when we're being looked at for why we're not attending certain, or why we are attending certain calls that aren't specifically crime related. I mentioned earlier here, dealing with or saving 3 lives in the last 3 nights of people who are overdosing, you could argue is not a criminal matter, but yet police officers are now, we're equipping and training them to administer naloxone, do CPR, and they do that type of work and effort without reservation for who the individual is, whether they are rich or poor, or gender or race. That's never a question as to who it is when they're stepping out and taking those measures for what they're doing, and that happens a lot more frequently than some of the negative things that are portrayed that occur out there. So if you're looking for it, I think what the members are looking for is that support for them, is that talk. Even when this whole COVID hit, it was important for us to get out ahead of things, because there were, in agencies, and not just here, there were people who were concerned that layoffs were coming. They were concerned that, what was going to happen to their jobs. And I know that happened in places, and in reality, it did turn into it. So, they're looking for that sense of security and who is there to support them. And when I say support them, it's not support them if they're doing something wrong. It's knowing, and hopefully boards and others have a clear understanding of the true work that they're doing, and are able to offer that clarity and support to them and out to the public in terms of that they are doing a difficult
Steve, are you
job.
seeing that? Like, is there something we should be doing as a board? Or are you seeing the leadership amongst the chiefs? Like, is there any gaps, anything that we need to, not necessarily use the word lobby, but just ensure that what you're talking about is actually happening?
Well, I think I could only give you an example. I know like the Victoria and Esquimalt board sent a letter to their membership, to their union, recognizing, so not to ourselves, but to the union executive, the board there, recognizing the work and the difficult times were there and expressing their support. I say sometimes even just something as simple as that, when the board is able to do it. I think as chiefs, we talk about it, and obviously we got Stephen and Adam are on here. I think that chiefs, a lot of us are spending a lot more time with the members directly, are trying to, are communicating, offering that reassurance, and finding ways to promote out the good work that is occurring, that's happening. But from a board's perspective, I think even just a letter to the union recognizing the trying times and what has happened, and for our staff, like I would say to you, and I want to take it past police officers, even the communication staff, we've had 3 months in a row of like the lowest overtime ever, with August having like 0 overtime, because the staff in there have been coming to work and dedicated through it. And they were the first ones to institute like temperature checks and wellness programs within our build, like internally. You can't go in there unless you're one of the select few. And then they don't even let each other in the building without a temperature check and a questionnaire. And they were the first people to do this because they work kind of off in a sealed room. And, real kudos to them in terms of it. So just informal
Chief,
recognition.
on that note, I mean, Sarah, I think wrote a letter at the beginning of the crisis. Do you think obviously a follow-up continuation letter? And is there any opportunity maybe for Sarah to jump, not to speak for Sarah, but for somebody on the board, is there a town hall just to kind of be able to have a presence? And if you don't think it's worthwhile, I think I'm just heightening this issue. I mean, we should be doing this more often, I guess, but just because of the current morale and all the external feet, COVID and all the stuff that's happened in the US, this heightened sensitivity towards it.
We did write, the whole board wrote a letter right at the beginning to thank everybody for all of their hard work. But, you're right, it's been a few months since then, and it's time for us to come back and make sure that members know that we haven't forgotten them and that we keep an eye on them and that we care about them. So absolutely, anything that we can do to get that message through, we will absolutely do, because we do keep an eye and we do care and we do want to make sure that they feel supported.
Yeah, and I can tell you this, no one's not feeling supported at this time, I think, when it comes to it. I remember we had those small glitches, like, well, to some people, Constable Hervase, who was stuck in the Philippines for months, he felt the support of everyone being in contact and connecting with them, and our ability to adapt. What happens, I think it's how we've been able to respond even when someone is potentially exposed to COVID, right? Like, because members are still on the street dealing with individuals, and how we've been able to respond, how we've been able to, assure them that their best interests are in mind, and that has gone over well. That took a while. Now I say it took a while. Every agency had to find a way to develop those measures. We lobbied hard and fast here to get the gym open they're just little things. Like, the only people who can use the gym in this building are the police officers at this point in time. But, we were able to get there. And I think we spend a lot of time listening to what are the little things that are important, not the idea that you got to go to a call, you got your mask, you got your goggles, you got your gloves, we clean the cars every night, we do all that. But it's those little things when someone feels it's important that they are able to exercise and they have a place because the community gyms are closed, and how we could set it up and do it. And so there's a lot of staff that work hard to get into that place of it. Now, having said that too, we're now planning to do some more of our, what would normally be awards and recognitions. I've asked Stephen to set up in smaller formats. And so we can certainly invite you to. They will be smaller groups, not all on the same day, but at given moments and right moments of time of being able to join in and either watch or hear what they're getting. They'll probably be short events that, whether they're 15 minutes at a police board, at a transit board, at a briefing, at Starbucks, whatever we do, right? To find a way to make sure that we continue to do things such as even recognizing the members for what they're doing.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, because we do want to make sure that they know that we are really proud of the hard work that everybody's doing. Going out when everybody else is staying home is something that we don't forget.
I will give you this one thing that they are very much getting excited about, or behind them, is they are very appreciative of this pension change. Like, we're close now. Oscar's done a phenomenal amount of work. We're down to just making the final declarations where they have to say in or out, or what they're going to do, or make their choices. And for a lot of them, that is a big thing. And the fact it's happening is going to be very important to them. And there's almost an unease. I get members who walk by going, when am I going to get the information update? When am I going to get the information update? And I tell them, as soon as Oscar puts in a full week, we'll get it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Does
Okay.
anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Well, it's really amazing the amount of work that you're doing, and you know, looking through the materials over the last few days, the amount of different categories of work is quite amazing. And I think in particular, we want to acknowledge the life-saving work that people are doing. I know, you know, you're talking about the opioid crisis, and it's constantly doing that can get very tiring. And you've had the same officers do that save people, bring people back using naloxone 3 times in the last week, you say?
Yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic work. Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So the next item is other business, item 4. And we'll move to 4.1, and that's our strategic plan update. Stephen Crosby.
Yes, thank you. So you all would have received a report that details the current status of our strategic planning process. COVID's obviously had an impact on our ability to meet in person, both with each other as well as with stakeholders for the purposes of consultation and engagement. But that doesn't mean that the strategic planning process can't proceed with some creative adaptation and ongoing discussions electronically. So the scope of the planned police board strategic conversations did expand somewhat in February and March. That was based on the interviews between the contracted facilitator, Louise Watson, and our board members. So before we're getting into the strategic goal setting for the organization for the next 5 years, the meetings that have been scheduled for October and November will really first focus on how the transit police vision fits within the broader vision of the TransLink enterprise and how we're supporting TransLink's goals. What is the value proposition at transit police, and also how the people that our officers interact with on a daily basis, how they relate to TransLink's customer. So my direction to the consultant is to press ahead as rapidly as possible, however, to allow time for fulsome conversation. So additional meetings will be scheduled as necessary based on how quickly the board moves through the process. You'll recall that I provided the board with a draft strategic plan development timeline in December of last year. So that timeline will be updated and brought back to the board at the November board meeting. And that will be based on progress made at the first 2 strategic planning meetings on October 19th and November the 5th. And I think we'll all have a kind of a better idea at that point in time about what the development process will look like once those meetings have concluded. I would anticipate that the process of strategic planning will continue throughout 2021 and will be ready for approval towards the end of next year. We'll of course move as quickly as we can through the process, but not really knowing if we're going to have, you know, a significant second wave of COVID, or kind of how the kind of ebbs and flows of COVID are going to go over the next like 12 to 14 months. Trying to put together a strategic planning process that's flexible and can account to changes with the pandemic. So I guess I'll just go to the group and just ask if anyone has any questions about the report or my verbal update.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I think this process, I'm glad to get back on track, and we'll have more discussion in the next meeting at our first strategic planning meeting, as Stephen says. I think, yeah, I think we need to have a fulsome discussion amongst us as we develop how we're going to move forward. It's challenging in ways that we haven't done before, and even those you know, facilitation meetings and the discussions about the issues we're going to have to figure out how to do that in this room, this kind of room. So thank you, Stephen. Nobody has questions? Okay, we can move on to item. Oh, yes, please.
Just
Who said?
I'm not sure if it's appropriate for us to deal with this in regular or in camera, but the question of should we be extending the current strategic plan now, or should we leave it until our later meeting in the year?
Thank you. I had made a note. I think we should talk about that. I think we should talk about it perhaps in camera first, and decide if we want to extend it today or if we, let's have that discussion in camera. We have at least one more board meeting,
Right.
regular board meeting before the end of the year, so we can have a more fulsome discussion. But definitely that's something that we're going to have to deal with. Yeah. Thank you.
Sarah, I had one more question that I wasn't able to get through to you under Dave's report, but may I go back to that out of order?
Please, yes.
Just,
Is your system a bit? Is there a bit of a time lag on it that you said you were?
Does it sound like it?
No, but you just said you weren't able to get through. If I'm going too quickly, raise your hand or something. I've got you guys all on.
Yeah, I think it was just my volume was down on my mic, so
Oh, okay.
I corrected it. But I just wanted to ask Dave, have you heard anything back from the province in relation to our request for traffic fine revenue sharing?
No, we've returned, as you remember, as I mentioned, it's gone over to Ma, which is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, right? So we're following up. We followed up with a letter there asking for it. So, but we haven't heard anything, and at this point in time. But we're continuing to pursue it. We know the name of the deputy minister who received the letter.
Right.
So,
okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, we'll move ahead to 4.2 diversity initiatives. And that is, who's
Sorry,
giving that report? Is that you, Chief?
Yeah, I can just introduce this. Remember this part of our diversity and coming out of the initiatives that we took on from strengthening transit police support of Indigenous peoples report. There is a set of training that has been conducted by Sergeant Simpkin and Constable Rattray, and we're simply looking for to offer this as training to the board. It's only a 2-hour session, and it talks about it in and amongst kind of our role with this kind of really vast population on the move, and the, as I call it, almost the urban Indigenous First Nation individuals. So this would be a recommendation, I think, from Stephen here as well, about arranging for this type of training for the board members, if you'd like.
So, I mean, I'd like to say that we're very glad to have this, and we've asked, and I'm delighted that there's that Constable Simpkin and the others can repurpose the training that they've already delivered to members. And so I'll throw it open to the floor if anybody has any comments. Murray.
I'm strongly supportive of this.
Thank you.
And would like to move the recommendation.
And do I have a seconder? Marnie. Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll get that rolling and we'll get that training set up. So important. So thank you. Okay. We are now moving to a report from the chair of the Finance Committee. Ali. Ali, you're on mute. There you go.
There was nothing to report from the Finance Committee.
Okay. We'll move to a report from the chair of the Governance Committee. And one of the things I'd like to report is that we have retained a, sorry, I'm just going to close my blind a bit. We have retained an ethics advisor for the board, and that is Jean Whitto, and that is great. So she's going to be available to us if we have any ethical questions or concerns from time to time. And I think the rest of the report I'm going to keep for in camera at the moment. And we're now moving to item 5, review of committee chairs and members. Oh my goodness, I did it again. I didn't do a proper welcome to our new members because I've had conversations with them and I forget that we have not been at the first board meeting. Oh my goodness. I said to myself last night, don't do that again. Make sure you do that right off the top. But I want to say a proper welcome to George Madden and Carla Hotel. Thank you very much for joining our board. We are so happy to have you. And Marty, have you been at a board meeting yet? I'm losing track of the time. You have. Well, you get another welcome anyway. But thank you both for joining. We are very happy to have you. Carla has previous experience on another police board. George has long experience in the sector, working with lots of different police organizations in his former life as a founder of a recruitment firm. Carla's an academic with lots of experience in evaluations and research and leadership. And we're so happy to have you both on the board. I've had a chance to talk to you both at length already. And I know that you bringing fresh energy and excitement to this role and lots of good questions already at the committee meetings that you attended. So I apologize for not doing this at the top of the meeting, but I am doing it now. Very happy to have you on board and very pleased that we're going to be picking out which committees you're going to sit on. I will tell the rest of the board that I've spoken with both Carla and George and suggested that, and I've thought about this in the item on the agenda, and I think it would be nice if both of them came to another committee meeting just to kind of get their feet wet a little before we throw them right into the deep end of the committee work. So we're going to have a couple more discussions, I think, before we assign them to a particular committee. I know that they're eager to roll up their sleeves, and so we'll do that in the next couple of weeks, I think. Maybe after the next strategic planning meeting, we can firm up those choices. But maybe if you'd like, would you like each to say a few words? If you're comfortable doing so, just a hello and a welcome and a proper introduction to everybody. Maybe we could start with Carla. Thank you, Carla, for joining and welcome aboard.
I'm going to take the off mute. Okay. Hi. Thanks very much for that, Sarah. I'm really pleased to be on the transit board. And as Sarah said, I do have some background having sat on the newest police board. So I have a little bit of a sense of some of the acronyms, although it still feels overwhelming again, all of the various materials. So I want to echo Sarah's comment about just the vast, the comprehensive content and variety of subjects and areas. But yeah, I'm quite excited. I teach criminology at Douglas College. I've been doing some consulting and research on program evaluation for a number of years, and I'm quite interested in police governance and this kind of work. So I'm pleased to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. And George, welcome aboard.
Thanks. And just like Carla said, delighted to be part of the group, and having known some of the folks that are involved over a period of years, it's provided me an opportunity to get a good understanding of some of the key issues that are out there. And I look forward to working with everyone around the table and through the chair and through the chief. And with regards to some of the committee work, however the chair feels I would be best suited, I'd be more than happy to join in that discussion and go forward with the strategic planning process as well.
Great. Thank you both. And I've spoken to you so many times already, and you've attended some committee meetings, and I had lost track of the fact that you hadn't met everybody yet on the board. Okay, so that's great. I think you'll all really enjoy working with both of them. Okay, does anybody have any comments before we move on? Okay. Item 6 is the Canadian Association of Police Governance virtual conference. We're talking about whether or not people would like to attend. Have you had a chance to look at the agenda? Is anybody expressing any interest in attending this conference? It looks valuable to me. I'll be going. Okay. George.
Well, I mean, as a new member, I certainly defer to anybody who's been on the board for a lot longer that would like to participate. If there isn't that interest by someone else or due to time constraints and so on, I'd be happy to participate as well. But we could maybe have that discussion in the next couple of days.
Sure, and I would encourage people to go. I think it's affordable and there'll be some good discussions. So if people have time, and maybe we can find out if we can attend parts of it and not the whole thing, because I think 3 days might be a bit long.
Sarah, do you need a motion? Do you need a motion?
Marie?
Do you need a motion to authorize the expenditure for whoever
We do.
chooses to attend? So I'll make the motion that we authorize the fees be paid for whoever on the board chooses to attend the conference.
That's terrific. Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Great. Thanks, Carla. Okay.
Sorry, Sarah, can I just ask on that? I think you were saying, I'd like to be able to attend as well. I just don't think I could do all 3 days. So I'm just wondering about, portions of, or I don't want to.
Yeah, maybe Karen, could you connect with them and find out how we can arrange to attend portions of it? Is there a different rate if you attend? I mean, they might not, but yeah, because 3 days is a bit long. Yeah, see what
I will find out. I think there's a daily rate as well, but I'll look into that and
there might
I'll
be a
let
daily
you know.
rate. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay. Item 7, I don't really have anything to report on the ECOM AGM. Unfortunately, I was dialing in from Galiana, and my connection broke, and I spent the next 40 minutes trying to get back on and could not. So I have not yet had a chance to connect. I've tried to connect. We've been missing each other, so I will report if I have something else to report, but unfortunately I only attended the first 10 minutes of that meeting. So technology, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on where you are. Okay. Item 8. Yes. Carla, you want to report back on the CAPG webinar, Mental Health for Police Personnel?
Yeah, I'm a keener. So I went, I attended the webinar yesterday that was presented by Dr. Nick Carlton, the University of Regina, and he's also a director with CIPCERT, just presenting on, the current research that they're doing, the launch of their new website, a couple of big studies that they're involved in. He did a sort of an overview presentation of the prevalence rates and sort of talked about the work that they do with public safety personnel, so including fire and paramedics and a variety of other first responders. But it was really, there were some interesting kind of key takeaways. One, the big thing that they were announcing is that their internet delivered cognitive behavioral therapy has been launched, and they're hoping to have it accessible across all of the provinces and territories in Canada shortly. They launched in Quebec and Saskatchewan on Wednesday. And their early research on delivering CBT online is that the outcomes for it with regard to post-traumatic stress injuries are consistent with in-person. And one of the values of delivering it online is that it reduces the stigma and the logistics around trying to access that type of therapy. So it was, sort of excited presentation around that. there was a key takeaway, and it's apropos of the discussion earlier that Dave was presenting on with regard to providing sort of, and comments about providing sort of regular validation and feedback to the members about the work that they're doing. One of the key findings of some of the research that they've been doing at CIPSR was that, you know, a consistent and ongoing need and request from members is the regular, consistent validation of their contributions, of the fact that we know their work is really hard, that it's really challenging, that they're doing a good job, and that it's meaningful and it's consistent and it's regular. So I think it's apropos of that discussion where, you know, whether there's letters or there's attendance in other town halls, as Ali suggested, that you know, being there actually makes quite a difference, and that was reiterated in the research that they're doing. The second you know, request was sort of demonstrable support at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. They talked a little bit about their the resources and the website that's available now, that's paid for through public safety, so free to anyone to do self-assessment, to use the resources. And that's constantly or continually being upgraded. Another interesting study that they had done was looking at some of the interventions that have been made available to members, like CISM or R2MR or various other interventions for post-traumatic stress injury. And what they found was that each of them had a slight but significant impact on post-traumatic stress injury, which was important to note. It's not a cure-all, but it did have this significant impact. What I found interesting was that there was no difference between them. And so now this is cross-sectional data, so it's not longitudinal long-term studies, but it's kind of suggests that it doesn't necessarily matter what the program is, it's that there is a program. And then it speaks back to, you know, providing that support, recognizing that the work is challenging. So I thought that was an interesting, you know, sort of observation, and that's backed up in the research. Another little piece that I wrote down as a key takeaway was that a lot of the feedback that they're getting in their research from members is the key person of support is typically a spouse or friend, not necessarily peer-based or not necessarily someone that they work with, a colleague, which was inconsistent with what I had thought particularly in policing. And so the sort of suggestion was make sure that the spouses and those that are closest to members, you know, have access to resources on symptoms and early indicators of these kinds of stress injuries. So anyways, those are a few things. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I was glad I went. It was an hour, and they were talking about all kinds of other, you know, quick 15-minute webinars that are, you know, going to be made available, you know, free on their website.
Thank you. I know that we have a lot of programs, and we've been concerned about member mental health for a number of years. This is really interesting data, especially that it's sort of whichever program, you know, there doesn't seem to be any clear front runner for any particular program over any other.
And he cautioned that in that it is, you know, so it's a one-time point, you know, like it's cross-sectional. So it didn't suggest, it suggested that each one of those interventions, and I think they had CISM, and they had the CIDS, and they had R2MR and peer support and mental health first aid. They had all these, you know, the various interventions that may be available at different police services or different agencies. And each one of them had slight but significant impacts on the odds of screening positive for post-traumatic stress injury. So those are, you know, it was just interesting to me that, like, it suggested, and this is totally anecdotal, that, you know, showing that you care, that the support is there is the actual, you know, the gem inside of that, and maybe the various packaging that it has, or the various approach. So one of the comments he made was, you know, providing, you know, finding something that's as cost efficient as possible to the organization and can get to as many members is actually better than maybe something that's highly, you know, specialized and expensive and only can be accessed by a few. So that I thought was meaningful.
Okay. So our team will get their hands maybe on that data and take a look at it and see how our offerings met for the membership too.
I think there was someone there from Transit from the HR department. So
yeah, good. Yeah, they've been at this for a while. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for November 13th at 9 a.m. And if no one has anything else to raise in the portion of the meeting, we will adjourn and move into our in-camera. And I think before we go, one of the things that we're going to discuss in camera, and I just want to put this on the open record, is our scheduling of these meetings, of whether or not we're going to maybe do some portion of an in-camera meeting prior. We're still getting the hang of how to do this on the live stream, and so we're going to have a lengthier discussion about this process and about our scheduling of that as we go forward. Okay. Thanks. And I guess we close. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be back in a few minutes